I know you can try and deny it if you want to, but I know that many of you watching this Nugget series were most excited about the data center design information that we would give you. Yeah, try and deny it, but designing data center infrastructures is something that everyone is excited about. Cisco has renamed the server farm that we used to learn about the data center. And it's good that they renamed it because really things have changed. We're going to explore those changes in this exciting nugget, and we'll also take a look at exactly the ins and outs of a typical modern data center design. So, what exactly will we tackle in this nugget? Well, we are going to talk about the technologies and the trends that are driving modern data center designs. It wouldn't be fair for us to get you all excited about these data centers without talking to you about the challenges that we face in modern data center designs. And then we'll take a look at Cisco's proposed solutions. We'll take a look at the enterprise data center architecture directly delivered from none other than Cisco. Finally, I want to end this nugget by really focusing on one of the most exciting trends in modern data center architectures, and that is this trend of virtualization. So we'll spend some time very focused on virtualization, and we'll see just why it is one of the forerunning technologies when it comes to the modern data center. Now, what are the trends when it comes to data center architectures? Well, Cisco identifies three generations thus far of data center technologies. What Cisco calls Data Center 1.0 is the monolithic mainframe type of environment. Yes, this was everything, all of the data that organizations need to access contained in one or more monolithic mainframe devices. You know what's pretty interesting about this? Is if you look inside the mainframed environment, you will see there was some virtualization going on. Yes, inside the mainframe itself was the concept of virtualization. Something else I want you to think about this is that everything, all the resources that people need, we're trying to centralize. Now, in data center 2.0 type of technologies, there was a kind of an evolution to client server environments, right? You would have a server that had a ton of information on it, and then you would have a client that would have some of the processing power and information on it, and these two would kind of share the load in a client server type environment. By the way, this didn't happen in the early mainframe environment, right? The machine that was accessing the data was called the dumb terminal. What a terrible name. How awful. Yeah, a dumb terminal indicating that it truly needed the mainframe to get any valuable information or data. The client server type of environment tried to separate this out, with the client having some responsibility, the server having the bulk of the responsibility. Guess what? In Data Center 3.0, we come full circle. We go back to a centralized approach like in 1.0, and a real heavy dose of virtualization is used in this 3.0 technology. We're going to go ahead and we are going to take all of the information and put it in this virtualized data center type infrastructure. We're going to use things like blade servers, and these blade servers are going to connect to both the LAN and the SAN, thanks to something Cisco calls the unified fabric. And we're going to run virtualization technologies like VMware, just one of many virtualization vendors we could choose, but certainly the most popular. And we're going to centralize all this stuff, as I said, very much coming full circle with the early mainframe technology. It's just that the specifics that make up the data center are going to change. Let's now elaborate on this Data Center 3.0 initiative even more. Now, Cisco admits that the Data Center 3.0 initiative from them is very complex. And whenever we have a lot of complexity, you know what we want to do, everybody. We want to break it down modularly. So what we do is we compartmentalize Data Center 3.0 from Cisco, and we recognize that it's really about three main categories. Virtualization technologies, and you know we're going to elaborate on that later in this nugget, and then something else called unified computing equipment from Cisco and unified fabric. Unified computing equipment, I'm going to go ahead and give you a tour of next. We'll take a look at the UCS system from Cisco, and we'll see just how it is a server system that's going to allow amazing levels of virtualization and high performance as well as high availability. I'll show you that next. But let's talk for a minute here about unified fabric. The idea behind unified fabric is we're going to take the LAN information in an organization and we're going to take the storage area network information of an organization and we're going to unify them onto what is typically 10 gigabit per second Ethernet. Yep, that's right. We're going to go ahead and take both LAN traffic and storage area network traffic and unify them on these real high-speed Ethernet flavors that we have today. You see, storage area network traffic was typically moved with something called fiber channel. But a great invention called fiber channel over Ethernet allows us to go ahead and unify these technologies over one particular media, and that's 10 gig E. So now we don't have to invest in separate storage area network and LAN architectures. Instead, we can unify this traffic over one simple media. Now let's show you that unified computing system. Here we can see a B-series chassis from Cisco Systems. Look at this thing. This is a big metal box that slides into your rack of Cisco equipment, and inside this box we have a bunch of blade servers that are optimized for running a VMware, a virtualized type of environment. Here's an M1 server. Notice it's a half-width server. Here is a B250 M1 blade server that occupies the full width of the chassis. If we spin this chassis around, we'll see that there are redundant power supplies and there's redundant hot swappable fan modules. How does this connect to the unified fabric, both the LAN and the SAN infrastructure? Well, that happens thanks to these fabric extenders that are in the chassis. So this is going to provide us with a module to insert the appropriate connectivity that we want for connecting to both the LAN and the storage area network. So here you can see an example of this unified computing system hardware from Cisco.com. Cisco Systems, that is. I always say Cisco.com instead of Cisco Systems. It's so funny. And this particular equipment is an example of one of those three areas. Here's the unified computing equipment that is going to support heavy amounts of virtualization, that is also going to support a unified fabric of LAN and SAN traffic living together. Now, what has driven Cisco and the industry to this new 3.0 data center architecture? Well, I'll tell you, it's challenges like we see here on screen. Yeah, it's things like power consumption and space and scalability and management and security and virtualization support of traditional client-server architectures that have really led to this. I sum it up with something called server sprawl as a description. Yeah, I think server sprawl really speaks to what we've seen in this industry. Somebody says, all right, I'm going to set up the data center for my organization, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to install an Exchange server because we need those mail services. And we just discovered that we need to move to a SQL Server environment, so we're going to install one of those boxes. Oh, wait a minute. I just realized that we have to do a SharePoint box. Yep, okay, let's install a SharePoint box. Oh, by the way, we just outgrew that SharePoint implementation, so we need another SharePoint box. Oh, and by the way, we also have a need for Oracle in another aspect of the company. What are we doing? We're adding server after server after server for the needs of our organization. These additional physical servers are consuming more power, more space. They don't scale all that well. They're very difficult, if not impossible, to manage as a group. And then we have issues with security on all of these separate boxes. Virtualization support really is driving this evolution. The concept is you get rid of all these traditional server boxes and you go with blades. Blades that are inside one of those chassis that we just looked at. Inside one of these blades that are designed to be virtualized, you can run as many instances of something like Windows Server operating system. You can run as many of those instances as you like to support all of these various technologies. Thanks to virtualization, you can even migrate them from physical blade to physical blade. As a matter of fact, you could even migrate them from one chassis to another chassis in disparately located data centers. So, the challenges that we face today are due to something we call server sprawl. And we are definitely getting rid of that in a modern data center infrastructure. Now, Cisco really wants you to move to this new architecture because they care about you. Yes, of course they do. And what they do is they give us great tools like this UCS power calculator to show us just how much money we could save if we move to this new and exciting architecture. Yeah, if we turn our back on that concept of server sprawl, and you can literally come in here with this tool and you can say, all right, we're going to use the B200 M2 blade. In fact, I'm going to have 6 blades in the chassis this way. And notice we could even go in and customize that configuration. What they do for us is over here on the right, they show us just how much power this particular configuration will consume. So note, they provide us great tools that we can use when we are considering our design to really go to our client and say, look, this is exactly how much money you'll save by moving to Data Center 3.0. Now here's something really interesting about the Cisco Enterprise Data Center architecture. You already know it. Yeah, you really do. There's going to be a data center core layer typically. There's going to be a data center aggregation layer. And then there's going to be a data center access layer. Notice that many times the aggregation layer can be collapsed right into that core layer. The data center access layer, well, it's all about having a nice high port density and also having a large variety of port types in order to provide the connectivity that the various servers and SAN and LAN components are going to need in the modern data center. At the data center aggregation layer, we're going to find a bunch of layer 4 to layer 7 services that exist for things like security, for functions like high-level management of the infrastructure. And then, of course, at the data center core layer, it's going to be all about the highest speed technologies. Sure, we're going to be dealing with things like 10 gig E ports in this particular infrastructure layer. We're going to be dealing with very little policies that provide overhead. So we're going to try and keep the quality of service and the security stuff out of this particular layer and make sure that is segregated into the aggregation layer. So it's a very familiar three-layer architecture that we often find in the enterprise data center architecture. Now, it probably doesn't surprise you these days that when we say virtualization, we have to kind of say what aspect of virtualization. You can't just say, I'm a virtualization expert or designer anymore, because someone might stop you and say, well, are you talking about network virtualization? Is that your specialty? Are you designing things like virtual local area networks? Are you working with virtual private networks? Are you working with virtual routing and forwarding instances on routers? You see, all of these are aspects of virtualization, aren't they? What a lot of people mean these days, since these technologies are so mature and have been around for so long, a lot of times what people mean is that they are masters of the emerging area of device virtualization. Yeah, so they are working with virtual machines that we install on hardware. Or maybe they are taking adaptive security appliances and they are making virtual device contexts out of those particular devices. They're taking one firewall from Cisco and they're partitioning it into multiple different firewalls. Or maybe they're taking switches and bundling them together in what is called the virtual switching system from Cisco. So, lots of different technologies are involved when we say virtualization right now. And these might mean network virtualization with things like VLANs, or device virtualization with things like virtual machines that are going to run over a blade architecture. So in this nugget, we took a look at the technology and trends that are shaping modern data center designs. We talked about the challenges that have brought about these technologies and trends, and we emphasized server sprawl. We took a look at Cisco's enterprise data center architecture and discovered that they are going to build a three-layer architecture typically based on architecture that is tried and true for other networking technologies. And finally, we wrapped up by talking about virtualization and realizing that it's not just about device virtualization, it might also mean network virtualization as well. Well, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.